You're listening to Skeptoid. I'm Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com. Hunting the Mokele-Mbembe. Does a species of sauropod dinosaur still exist in the wilds of Africa? Some believe that it might. Today we call this cryptid the Mokele-Mbembe, a local name for the beast, said to frequent the rivers and lakes of various parts of Africa, to live on vegetation, and to fiercely defend its privacy against human and animal intruders alike. Books are published on it. Television programs chronicle the expeditions of investigators searching for it. Today we're going to find out how belief in dinosaurs living in Africa has become, if not mainstream, at least not so far out on the fringe as we might expect. Sauropods were the large elephant-sized, long-necked dinosaurs, a brontosaurus being one familiar example. The Mokele-Mbembe is said to hide in the rivers and lakes of the Congo Basin and other places throughout Africa. In 1992, one Japanese film crew flying over a lake took some footage of something leaving a wide V-shaped wake as it moves across the surface of a lake. Though it was much too far away to make out any detail in the blurry, standard-definition video, it's often shown freeze-framed on a shot that shows what appears to be a long neck sticking out of the water ahead of a large blob. Most people who watch it feels it looks more like two people in a canoe. Well, one strike against this being a sauropod is that we now know they couldn't have spent time with their bodies submerged, as water pressure would have made it impossible for them to expand their lungs to breathe. Nevertheless, relict sauropods are nearly universally given as the identity of the Mokele-Mbembe, hiding underwater in rivers and lakes. Yet, as noted, it is widely promoted as plausible, if not proven. Famous cryptozoologists have devoted volumes to attempting to prove this as fact. Expeditions to this day continue, and of course, Mokele-Mbembe's greatest boost came from a 2009 episode of the TV show Monster Quest, which presented a team of people, described as scientists, who went to prove its reality. As the result of all this attention, there are two basic points that the average person on the street, who has heard of the Mokele-Mbembe, knows about it. First, there are legitimate scientists interested in it and doing research on it. And second, the creature has a long history in the region and is well known to local residents. The average person, who's unfamiliar with the skeptical process and innocently watches TV science channels in good faith, can be easily forgiven for accepting both of these points. However, I would argue that there's an enormous red flag warning that a heavy dose of skepticism is warranted. You will not find Mokele-Mbembe chewing on some plants in a pond at the zoo, and you will not find its bones mounted and labeled at your local natural history museum. African rangers do not encounter its carcass as they do elephants and rhinos. You will not even find it in any taxonomical reference of all the Earth's animals. The only other creatures of which these are true are Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. Thus, I would suggest that it's perfectly fair to go back and scrutinize our 2 points. First, that science has dedicated trained professionals to finding the creature, and second, that it's well known to the local populations and has a long history there. Let's start with this point. The first thing we learn is that Mokele-Mbembe is only one specific name in a vast, incredibly vague field. Africa is big and enormously culturally diverse. The number of local legends throughout the continent is too large to count. For any creature you can imagine, a local legend somewhere matches it. In a land where real giants like hippos and elephants exist, of course there are going to be innumerable legends of other large beasts. Mokele-Mbembe is just one whose name happens to have trickled down into Western literature and become known to Western cryptozoologists. But like all the others, no evidence supports its existence. It is really just another story. Tracking down the origin of the actual name, Mokele-Mbembe, turns out to require quite a bit of detective work. The history is closely tied to Germany, as much of Africa was a German colony at the turn of the 20th century. In 1907, Actual sauropod bones were discovered there, and that discovery is basically what triggered all the interest in potential relict dinosaurs still surviving. This notion was first put to paper in 1909 by Carl Hagenbeck, a German zookeeper, collector of exotic animals, and circus operator. In his book, Beasts and Men, he proposed that dinosaurs might still exist in Africa, and gave some vague anecdotes about having heard something about it, but he didn't give the name. That came a few years later, from the man who appears to be the original source for Mokele-Mbembe. He was Captain Ludwig Freiherr von Stein zu Lausnitz, a German officer with the then German colony of Cameroon. In 1913, he was sent in command of a geographic expedition, and on that expedition, he first heard stories of the Mokele-Mbembe. His account was not published due to the outbreak of World War I, but he did write the manuscript, which, so far as anyone knows, survives today only as quoted snippets given by later authors. The earliest I could find was from 1929 in the German-language book Dragons, Legend and Science by popular science author Wilhelm Bolsche. In Bolsche's book, von Stein said the natives called the creature the Mokele-Mbembe and gave the following description. The animal is said to be of a brownish-gray color with a smooth skin, its size approximately that of an elephant, at least that of a hippopotamus. It is said to have a long and very flexible neck, and only one tooth, but a very long one. Some say it is a horn. A few spoke about a long muscular tail like that of an alligator. Canoes coming near it are said to be doomed. The animal is said to attack the vessels at once, and to kill the crews, but without eating the bodies. The creature is said to live in the caves that have been washed out by the river in the clay of its shores at sharp bends. However, there's one very important point that Bolsche also included in his book, and that was von Stein's belief that this was nothing more than local folklore, and did not represent any actual animal. Bolsche was clear that von Stein wrote very cautiously that the creature probably existed only in the local residents' minds. Another German author, rocketry specialist Willy Ley, wrote a series of articles in German publications over the next couple of years, repeating von Stein's description of Mokele-Mbembe. In 1935, Ley fled Germany to escape Nazism and resumed writing in English in the United States. In 1941, he wrote his first full-length book on cryptozoology, The Lungfish and the Unicorn, an excursion into romantic zoology. And this time, he also included the same caution that Bolsche gave, even using some of Bolsche's own language, Bolsche having died in the intervening years, that von Stein did not believe the Mokele-Mbembe was a real animal. Von Stein's account hit the big time in 1955, with the French publication, followed by the 1958 English publication, of famed cryptozoologist Bernard Heuvelmans' magnum opus, On the Track of Unknown Animals. Heuvelmans, who, being French, was probably unaware of Bolsche, credited Willy Ley with providing von Stein's quotation, and also included a number of accounts from other German colonists in Cameroon who had been contemporaries of von Stein. Heuvelmans' chapter on Mokele-Mbembe, including variations on the name such as Mokele-Mbembe and Mbulu-Mbembe, given by various authors, is the main source from which virtually all English-language lore exists regarding the Mokele-Mbembe. The one key point Heuvelmans chose to omit, however, was Bolsche's extended inclusion of von Stein's belief that it was probably just local legend, and not a description of an actual animal. Therefore, all modern authors who have relied on Heuvelmans as the primary source, and he is widely regarded as such, have missed out on the critical point. Pick up Heuvelmans or any other later book on Mokele-Mbembe, and you'll get the impression von Stein thought the creature was real. It's a good reminder to always go back and fact-check original sources. So although we can safely say that there's no reason to suspect any local legends about Mokele-Mbembe are any more real than any others, one thing you'll often see or hear is a researcher showing a picture of a dinosaur to a local, and that local responding that yes, they're very familiar with it. Sounds pretty convincing. But even William Gibbons, one of the Mokele-Mbembe believers featured on Monster Quest, pointed out that contaminated testimony is a problem, as pictures of sauropods have been circulated by Westerners throughout Africa for more than a century. He noted on one expedition that they rolled into a village with their camera crew and were greeted with, these must be the people looking for the dinosaur. And when a picture of one was shown to a young man who readily recognized it, he explained that, as an intelligent person in the world, he knows what a dinosaur is. The idea that a large number of Africans are somehow out of touch with the modern world is both racist and painfully out of date. But the actual name Mokele-Mbembe should be another matter. In the 1970s, reptile specialist James H. Powell, Jr. took some time during one of his trips to do some investigating on the side, in the same general area where von Stein collected his original account. When Powell showed illustrations of a sauropod to the Cameroon locals, they did not recognize it as a local animal, and when he asked them about the name Mokele-Mbembe, they had not heard of it. A local linguistic specialist offered him some slight variations of the name, though, which could be taken to mean mundane things like to bathe or to cry. Taken as a whole, the idea of a local legend serving as evidence that Mokele-Mbembe is real pretty much fails all the tests. So, what about our other point? That actual scientists regard it as real enough to mount expensive research trips hunting for it? Well, this does not appear to be the case either. I find no academic papers written on the question, and no record of any research grants. What we do find, however, is a large body of literature written by young Earth creationists. In fact, both personalities featured on Monster Quest, William Gibbons and Robert Mullen, were young Earth creationists, and neither had any scientific credentials at all. Some young Earthers feel if they could prove dinosaurs still exist, it would bolster their narrative that all of Earth's history took place within just the past 6,000 years. Anyone hunting through Africa searching for Mokele-Mbembe today is far more likely to be a creationist, or even just a fan of cryptozoology, than a scientist. Stories like the Mokele-Mbembe are part of what make life fun. They offer the promise of something magnificent, something incredible, something truly paradigm-shifting. The idea of pushing aside some foliage to reveal a prehistoric monster foraging is enough to make your heart race. It's little wonder that such a story would generate web clicks and prompt a TV network to make a show. Even digging through these century-old books to research this felt like an adventure. My encouragement to all who feel as I do, and who value stories like this, is to enjoy the legend as much as you can. You must be careful to avoid the obvious pitfall, which is to mistake it for a fact which inevitably must fail to meet expectations and thus lose its magic. Stories are stories, not facts, and keeping that firmly in mind is how we give them the greatest freedom to flourish. And who flourishes more than Skeptoid's premium supporters? The 3D Rivet Boys, Ulf Hedlund, Mike Mella in Toronto, and Jesse G. Donnett. Remember, every episode has a transcript page on Skeptoid.com that prints out into a nicely formatted PDF article, and also has complete bibliographic references and further reading suggestions. So is there anything in this episode you want to see more about? Got you covered. Just find its transcript page at Skeptoid.com. You're listening to Skeptoid, a listener-supported program. I'm Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com.